G'day, my name's Hunter Leonard. I'm the founder and CEO of 𝗕𝗏 and I help mature age people with work and business ownership. I'm a trained scientist. The big moment of financial impact for us was losing a client that was worth 50% of our revenue overnight. A couple of times we had people not pay for any of our work. I signed my first six-figure contract to start my business on the back of a napkin in a cafe. I also made over $1 million in revenue from one client who read my first marketing book. Running my business had become about running my business, but this was a moment of saying, well, there's a group of people that I can help.
Okay, mate.
Yeah, cool.
Stoked you're here.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to chat to you again, mate.
So what were you saying before?
I was about to say that I had you on my mind the other day because I was driving to go and see one of my 𝗕𝗏 advisors, and who's also the chairman of the company now. And along the way, I heard 𝗺𝗶𝗹𝗃𝗃 and her colleague on 7:02 a.m. in Sydney talking about older workers. And I went, oh, that's a topic I've got some interest in. I might give them a call. So I rang up, and the producer gets on the line and says, yeah, look, we've got, dozens of people on the line ready to talk. So, what have you got to say? Is it, bit of a brush off? And I just said, well, I'm a 7-time author. I've interviewed 350 mature age people and interviewed and surveyed 10,000 business owners, and so I've got a few viewpoints to share on the topic. Straight to the top of the list. Put me on air. Spoke for about 3.5 minutes, which was they were lovely. They asked the right questions. Wendy gave me the perfect setup to say, well, what should we be doing instead of sending off resumes and job applications, which was great. But the really exciting bit was coming back to my office, and there was an email from SBS inclusion team who have got courses in, I think they were saying 250,000 employees have access to their courses through over 1,000 organisations. And after catching up with the guy for a coffee the other day, they want to partner with me on developing a course that helps mature age people plan their future, which is just like, I'm so stoked. It's just very, 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 very exciting, but a great example of being able to get onto radio in front of, 300,000 or 400,000 listeners, but then get a reach from somebody who is your ideal partner. So it was published, profile, partnerships, the whole thing all in one 3-minute cycle. So yeah, it was very
Mate,
cool.
You're snowballing at the moment. When
Yes.
I can't remember when we met. Did 𝗕𝗏 exist?
No, not as a name or a business. It was. I think I came along to one of your sessions. Tim Reed invited me to come along to one of your one-day presentations where you had a whole bunch of KPIs talking about their experiences.
He's coming on the show.
It was at the convention centre, I think. Yeah. And I think I came to the strategy session the following day. And at the time, I was looking to expand my marketing business, and I'd spoken to a few people about this idea of licensing our intellectual property and having other people deliver the marketing, and then we would, create a network, franchise network, if you like, or a licensed network. But then during the course of the first few weeks of the program and the first couple of sessions, we really saw that this needed to be extracted as its own entity. So that ended up, I guess, 𝗕𝗏 is a product of the early parts of the Dent program.
So,
for sure.
So when explaining, and by the way, if you're just tuning in, this isn't a pitch for Dent, but a lot of my friends have done our work as well, mate. When you're talking to someone about the guts of what you do, not necessarily a pitch, but sort of like just business owner to business owner, giving them a context of your business, the value proposition, the market context, the driving sort of mission behind it.
Yeah.
Walk us through a bit of that.
Well, it's really about helping business owners for a start. I love business owners, and I've worked with them for years. I really like them as individuals because they're taking a risk, they're having a crack, they're taking responsibility for a few or many families that work for them, that sort of thing. They're trying to solve a problem. So I like them as individuals. But it's really about helping them understand that there is a way to be successful in business related to understanding the customer and the market. And we do the same thing in our Silver and Wise business with mature age people wanting to start a business, except that they don't have a business. They've got an idea, or they've got some skills.
So they're out of corporate.
Yeah, so they've come from. What I'm trying to work with them on is that they have value. Everyone else is telling them they have no value. So they try and get a job, they get no interviews. They send off resumes. They've got resumes that, you know, almost every person I speak to has some value or some intelligence or some experience or some wisdom, except everyone's saying to them, you don't have any. We don't want to employ you because you're 45 or you're 50. You've got a bit of, you know, grey hair, or you've got a few wrinkles. So therefore you have no value to us.
That doesn't seem to make any sense. Like,
it makes no sense.
And maybe we'll jump off the value proposition stuff for a sec, because I feel like I'd never understood. I'd never really thought a lot about ageism as a thing. I don't like isms to all that much.
Either.
I like to try and just like get along with everybody, and it's usually the world that reflects back to me all this injustice that's going on. It's like, God damn, like can't we all just get along? But ageism just seems dumb. Do you want to?
Yeah.
I don't know. Give the listener a bit of context as to where your sort of epiphany perhaps came from, and then we'll dive into some of the business model stuff.
Yeah. Look, it was really an intersection of a few pieces of information. It was kind of the way I operate. I suppose probably because of my science background, is I collect these bits of information, come in, and then all of a sudden they get synthesized, and then I go, you know, it's the aha science moment. You know, go, there's something
Eureka.
going on here that I could potentially fix. Exactly, Eureka. And the three parts of information were, I had studied a bit on mature age based on my mentor saying to me, go and look at mature age people, and I'd found there was some discrimination. So I'd met with the Human Rights Commissioner's strategic advisor, and he had given me some data that they were about to publish, which was that a quarter of people suffered ageism in the workplace. I had, obviously being in my, at the time, early 50s, I had a lot of friends, and I started asking them questions. I said, because I've never experienced it. Right, so I started my business in my early 30s. I've worked with men and women. I've worked with people of all cultures. I've worked with people of all religious persuasions, male, female, whatever. And I'm like you, I don't like isms at all. And I think they're artificial. But when I started hearing back from my friends, Peter, he's been out of work for 2 years. He's been trying to find a job, and he's depressed, and he's potentially at home, depressed, not, going, I have no value, that's it, I'm not going to ever work again. And I started thinking, this is crazy, because all of these people that were being mentioned to me, I knew they had skills and abilities for a start, a lot of background, whether it was in accounting or marketing or sales or whatever. And so I suppose it got my competitive hackles up a little bit that I wanted to do something about helping them. And try and
this is when
fight
you were
the
in
injustice a bit.
This is where you're in the marketing business still
thinking about trying to,
like, what do I do with the marketing business? How do I scale the marketing business? How do I kick the door off the hinges there? And then you started kind of being introduced to this concept of ageism, and probably relating to it a bit in the context, well, I mean, you haven't experienced it, but you're in the age bracket for it.
Totally.
And
exactly. And then I thought, well, okay, so what's happening with these people? And then I found out that they were taking too long to find a job, and then a bunch of them were saying, well, since I can't get a job, I'm going to start a business. And that was the connection for me. I went, I've got all this data on working with business owners. I know exactly what challenges they have. I know the problems that existing business owners have. So if these guys who are 55 or these girls are 45, for women, the ageism comes in earlier, by the way, maybe a decade earlier. But if they're going to go and try and start a business, they've got no experience, they're all looking around for answers, I can share some of the answers that we have. And so if you're going to start a business now, you probably don't have a lot of time to make sure it's successful. So I thought, well, if I can help them with a message from down the road, if you like, from all these other business owners, what problems they run into, then we can share that with them, and then they hopefully won't run into those problems because they can prepare for them when they're starting their business. So, get the plan right, get the marketing right, get the selling right, all those sort of elements that people were saying were a problem.
So this is like for you, it was like a combination of a pivot and a niche.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And that's when we decided it really needed to be a separate business, because it was more about the whole of business rather than just marketing. Although marketing is a core part of it, that understanding of the customer and the market, it became more about how do you actually start and run a successful business as a 45 or 50-year-old entrepreneur who's spent their entire life in corporate, in the bubble, and now you're completely exposed. You're the person responsible for everything, from the mailing of, licking of postage stamps right through to, setting up your website. Most people are starting a business on their own with very limited resources. How can I then help them with all of those elements? And that's where it went, okay, no, this needs to be a niche-focused business, which is why it ended up being called Silver and Wise, because it was all about what was the positive benefit of being a little older, the silver. It isn't related to hair colour, it's actually related to the fact they've probably worked for 25 years, which is the silver anniversary of life, if you like, or working life. And the wise is related to the fact they've got experience and wisdom. So that's why we ended up deciding to have that pulled out and leave Blue Frog to do what it does best, which is helping people with marketing who are existing business owners. Yeah.
How do people know that it's and look, this is going to be for people that are actually experiencing it an inappropriate question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, how do you know it's ageism? How do you know that they're just not lazy and comfortable and not really leaning in? Like how, I just can't imagine someone sitting there going, you've got all this experience, you've been around longer than anyone, you've got, a track record, you've got more context than any of these little new nitpickers coming in. I just can't imagine wanting that person out of my organisation.
Yeah, there's enough data now to know that it's real. I suppose what is the question you're asking, is ageism real?
Well, it's more helping me understand that, like, what do you know that I don't know, and maybe the listeners don't know, that kind of reinforces this as a thing.
Yeah, I suppose I'll give you two pieces of data, if you like. First of all, the Human Rights Commission and Deloitte, I think it was, did another study, and they actually asked organisations, is there an age above which you won't hire people? And despite the fact that it's illegal,
I was going to say, you can't ask that. I mean,
despite the fact, they did answer it. Wow. And I think it was something like a third of all organisations said, yes, we do have an age above which we won't hire. And of that, 70% said the age was 50.
See, the irony is it was the young 26-year-old HR idiot that doesn't even understand the law that answers that goddamn question, because there's no 55-year-old that's been around any kind of block once or twice that's going to answer that question like that.
No. I plead the fifth, Your Honour.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So that's the first piece of data. The second is a study that was actually done by, I spoke to this guy who was who I really admired. He senior HR industry professional, worked with many different boards. He was a very charitable individual as well, so he'd done a lot with charities as a result of his jobs. He actually got an Order of Australia honour from the Queen. So these guys no dummy. So he decided to do a bit of an experiment, independent of me. He told me about this in a conversation. So he did 2 resumes, changed his age on one of them, and sent the resume out, I think, to 50 companies, each resume to 50 companies. For the resume that had his age on it, he got this many interviews.
Wow.
And that's the other one.
That's a 0 for those of you.
That's a 0.
listening.
That's a duck egg. Yep, that's nothing. And then for the one where the age wasn't on it, or he was a younger version of himself, I think he referred to himself as the Luke Skywalker in the younger version and the Obi-Wan Kenobi in the older version, which gave me a bit of a chuckle. He got heaps of interviews. So the only difference was the age, and so he pretty much proved to himself that there's a reason for this. I'm told by people who are in the industry that there are now artificial intelligence recruiting systems that will run through a whole bunch of resumes for you, and they spit out the ideal candidates. I'm also told that they can be set.
Well, yeah, you give an age bracket, you give a sex weighting, you give, surely.
Exactly. Which is a whole other story, because that should be just pulled out of those programs, in my opinion, anyway, because you just can't. You shouldn't be doing that because it's against the law.
It's just against common sense.
That's true, and that was the point. When I looked at this, I went, okay, so here's, you and I are both interested in markets and what's going on and trends. In the next 50 years, the entire world is going to get older. Particularly in Western developed nations, we're going to end up with 50% of our population over the age of 50. We're going to be living till we're 90, 95, 100, 105, 110. We're going to be wanting to... For most people, it's not always about the money. It's just about remaining connected to society and the community and being valued and saying, well, at 55, have I got something left to say? Have I got something left to do? Have I got something left to mentor?
Oh, well, I don't see that there's any, I think it's obvious why people would want to keep working and keep contributing and keep adding value. What I don't understand is why someone wouldn't want to hire wisdom. Like, I think, I'm not sure if you changed your book name, but did you have a book called The Experience Generation?
The first one's called Generation Experience.
Generation Experience.
That was about helping people start a business. The next one I called The Experience Equation, which was this idea that experience equals is zero if you look at the maths of it. So we were having a bit of a play on that. But you're right, and it's not that there aren't experienced and wise people in corporate and in government and all that. I mean,
because there are, right? Yeah.
There are, but what we're seeing. What's happening is that there's this widening gap. We're seeing less participation of the 50 plus, less participation of the 60 plus. And there's artificial generalizations that they're not tech savvy, that they're slow, that they're inflexible, all these things. But when you actually look at the data, it's not true. People have run studies on it. They've found that people in their 50s and 60s can still be quite agile and change and learn things. A lot of them have grown up with computers since their 20s, so they can use every program they need to. If you look at their mobile phone, they've got apps that they're using every day for banking and connecting with their families and blah, 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 blah. The problem is, I think as a society, we see everyone from the age of 45 to 90 as the same group. And we're saying, well, all these 40 and 50-year-olds, we're treating them as if they're 70-year-olds who may be a little less tech savvy because they didn't grow up with it. Yeah. But nonetheless,
there are people in their 30s that are not tech savvy. I'm married to one of them.
Exactly.
Right? It's just, I think these generalizations are so... They seem to be so widespread these days in all sorts of areas. We love to generalize, and maybe it's because... the algorithms on the social media love to put people in these kind of echo chambers, and so there needs to be some kind of a generalized ideology or philosophy or set of principles. But it's I just struggle. When we recruit based on outcomes, objective. It's not even skill sets. It's like we're looking to achieve these outcomes. Right? We don't have that internal capability. How can you help? Right? And so long as that person can bring to the table and show us how they can help, right? And if they don't have IT basic skills, they're not going to get the job, whether they're 65 or 25.
Yeah, for sure.
And it just blows my mind that, I mean, do you find that corporate, and we won't spend the whole time on this, but do you find that corporates still tend to hire for like resume based kind of skill set, and then there's a generalized assumption that, well, we need tech savvy, etc., you're over 50, you can't be tech savvy, as opposed to sort of outcome results based recruitment?
Yeah, that I'm not sure, to be honest, mate. I haven't really gone into the depth of it. But I've spoken to hundreds of mature age people, and it just seems this commonality that they're being stopped at base one, if you like, or before base one. So they're not even getting to the point of being able to put their skills and abilities forward, or their ability to do this. And it's men and women. And I guess my point is that if you look at the economics of it, I'm a social guy. I like the fact that our economy is going to remain strong, because if the economy is strong, we can afford social security for those that can't work or those that need help. That we can afford roads, we can afford health. Sound like I'm running for government. I couldn't be further from the truth, but
that's what they say just before they run.
Never going to happen. But a civil society needs good fundamental economics. We need to do that. And the statistics show that for every 5% increase in participation in the mature age workforce, we're talking about $60 billion difference to the Australian economy. Multiply that across the world economy, we're talking about trillions. We're also talking about the fact we are going to have an ageing population. There are going to be older people around, so get used to it, because most of us are going to be older.
2000 and I think it was 13 or 14. Hang on. So the baby boom was 1946 to 1964. So it would have been from 2014. Correct. We've had more Australians turning 70 every single day. Right, so every single day is a world record for people turning 70. Every day. Today has been a world record for people turning 70. Tomorrow is going to be a world record for all the way through to 2030. It's mental.
Yeah,
it's mental.
Yeah, exactly.
I also can't imagine.
So we have to fix it.
I can imagine young people, because I think average tenure in a role now is like a couple of years. It's like tiny. They just want to jump around. But I wouldn't imagine, and I have no evidence to back this up, but I wouldn't imagine that, I don't even know the right word, someone over 50, let's just say, is going to want to bounce around all that much. I imagine they're looking for stability. They're looking to lock in and put in some roots and play the long game. And again, you just see all these benefits. They got more knowledge, more experience, more context, less flighty, less likely that they're going to go, oh, you know what, I just want to go backpacking around Asia for 12 months. It's like, God damn it. Next. Yeah, crazy. Yeah. So what I think is interesting is you're not, well, I mean, you are trying to bring attention to that issue, but you're not trying to fix the problem in corporate. You're like, okay, corporate is the way it is. Let's not raise our fist in the air as a victim. Let's build a business and, let success be the middle finger pointing back at the...
Yeah, exactly. And that was the point I was making about, we can actually abolish ageism for each individual, one person at a time, by putting them back in control
they're not
of their financial future.
I don't need anyone to say yes or no to me. I am sovereign in my own ability to create and commercialize value.
Yeah. And so if I can help an individual who wants to start a business create a secure financial future through starting that business. And you're right, they are about security. These guys are not wanting to start the next Atlassian software. They just want to start a good, solid, average, everyday business. I don't mean average in the context of
no,
average.
It's normal,
I mean
just a traditional,
97% of businesses in Australia are small business.
What are some of the examples of the types of businesses that I would imagine a lot of them are in the consulting space, are they?
Yeah, look, there's consulting, but there's also product businesses. People have got an idea for a product. I interviewed a really cool Canadian guy who came out of the packaging industry, and at 66 he started an environmentally sensitive packaging company. So he's doing sustainable packaging made out of seaweed and other things. And he's now 74, and he's done a TED talk, and he's fantastic.
Is this on your podcast?
Cool and yes, it's one of my podcast.
What's the podcast?
Interviews. Yep. It's called the Over 40 Business Show.
Sure. Does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, it's what it says on the tin. So there's people out there starting all sorts of things. But yeah, there's a lot of people with good skills in finance or marketing or sales or whatever, and they want to mentor other people, so they end up mentoring other small businesses, which is great. We can create a bit of a community as well, where somebody's got one skill, somebody's got something else, and we can put them together. But there's also this other group that don't necessarily, and this was a really key insight that we found for the second book, was that when we researched it, 80% of organisations around the world are thinking about more freelance work in the future. So this gig economy, they're wanting to have a flexible workforce. They want to have high costs of, full-time, part-time employees on contracts or, long-term employees. They're going, well, we've got something to do. We need to bring in, 50 people to get on the phones and make calls. Great, let's bring them in. And there's quite a lot of mature age people that don't necessarily want to start a business. but we're pointing out to them that sending a resume off and trying to go for a job is not necessarily going to be the future that you're going to see. What you're going to be is in a future where potentially as an individual, you might have to sell your services to 10 people a year to make your income.
Which is how Hollywood has worked for decades. You know, the lighting guy is going from one project to the next project to the next project, trying to build a reputation as the lighting guy for horror movies or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. So we can help them unlock a bit of value in the future to say, okay, what are you good at? What do you love doing? What are your goals for the future? What are you trying to do with your family? What's the legacy you want to leave behind? Put together a plan. Very, very few people in this audience that I spoke to had a plan. They don't. They're thinking about, I just got to get a job. I just got a job. So they've gone from having a job to no job. So now it's I got to get a job. And I say to them, hang on a second, that's fine. Good luck.
But
probably unlikely. Probably unlikely because of all these other things that are happening. Therefore, you have to be thinking about yourself as a business. Even if you don't want to run a business, you have to think about yourself as a brand. This fits perfectly in with, you know, the KPI process, doesn't it? What's you're a person of value, even if it's in your local community. You're the go-to guy for bookkeeping in Brighton, or you're the go-to guy for, I don't know, making violins in Brisbane. Whatever you want to do, whatever it is, it's probably not going to be a job with one person for the next 5 or 10 years. It's probably going to be the fact you're going to have to run project management or be a freelancer. And I don't mean the Uber driving gig economy where they earn $3 an hour. I'm talking about people that actually have value, that can sell it for a good value. Therefore, look after their own finances and not be a burden on society in the future, which is really the ultimate aim of our business. Is if we have all these people gainfully employed, the rest of us who are still paying tax won't have to pay 50 or 80% tax because no one's working.
Did I hear you say you had a CEO?
A chairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly this isn't just you as a business coach, right? You've built an organisation. So walk us through the business model.
Yeah, well, the business model is still what we thought we would like to do with Blue Frog when we were looking at expanding the marketing. It's based on a licensed model. So we license other people to deliver the intellectual property that I've built based on our market insights. With our 10,000 surveys of business owners, 400 individual interviews with mature age people, I've got some stuff to deliver. Let's just call it the technical term of stuff.
Content. So you've got courses, modules.
Books, content,
training,
books, courses,
coaching,
modules.
architectures.
Yep, coaching, architectures, all that sort of stuff. But what I also created was a boot camp that is also an online piece of content that can train the advisor. Because the first 2 advisors I brought on, I spent, you know, over 100 hours.
I remember when you were going through that. I remember you got your first one.
Yeah.
Was there a story that something about that first guy, and then you secured like your first $1 million contract or something?
Yeah. So the first guy that came along used to be an old client of mine, and he's got like a resume that if I had his resume, I'd be, you know, on the top of the mountain going, wow, this is amazing. 50 plus years in business, CEO, CMO, all these amazing jobs with big companies. Could not get a job when he was in his 60s. Could not get a job. People had said, no, that's it, you're done. He called me one day and said, hey, can we have a chat about this Silver and Wise thing that you've been spruiking about the last 6 months or so? Anyway, he came on board as our founding advisor. He also has some great connections into the business community, chambers of commerce and all that sort of stuff. So he connected us with the Australian Chamber of Commerce, who ended up then partnering with us on a contract with the federal government, which ended up being a $1.2 million multi-year contract for us. So that kind of secured his revenue for the next 3.5 years and some revenue for us.
That's how you know that's how you know you brought the right person into your team, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That also secured a second territory for my second advisor in Melbourne, who was a mid-40s guy who'd come out of corporate, that was trying to build a portfolio sort of consulting career with different things. He makes wine on the side, and but no one got him. They didn't understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to do multiple things. He was trying to be what we're saying to our mature age people that you might need to be. You might need to build several sources of income around your passions in life. He ended up with a full-time contract for a period of time. We've brought on 2 more advisors. Our aim is the business model is therefore in Australia to have potentially 20 to 30 people around the country delivering the services. It's a very simple revenue split between head office and the advisor. They keep the bulk of the revenue. We get a percentage of the revenue to run content generation, lead generation, me writing books, going out and knocking on doors and, you know, holding the fist in the air saying ageism ageism sucks, we need to move on. And that's going to be the continuing model. And we've also had interest now from Canada, France, the UK, New Zealand, people who've also recognised this same issue in their own country, but have realised that we've developed some IP which is a practical solution. So rather than just being an advocate or an activist, if you like, and going out and saying ageism sucks, it's what's the other side of the equation. You can say that, but the government and society moves at the pace of a glacier on isms. We know this. If anyone's seen On the Basis of Sex as a movie, which is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it took her 4 or 5 decades and a whole bunch of consent. The alternative opinion in the High Court where she came out, but a whole series of reasons why she came in and she handled quite a bit of the issue of sexism. But we still have the glass ceiling. We still have women earning 60% of men in terms of an average wage. Blah 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 blah. We've still got racism. The Civil War ended 150 years ago. We've still got racism where people of colour in most countries are treated worse than others. So we know as a society we're crap at handling these things in the short term. So I realised that the only way to do it was one person at a time, which is therefore how do I create a course and a book that if one person reads it, it takes them out of that issue. If one person does a course, it helps them take control of their environment. If one person gets mentored or coached by one of our guys, it puts them in a place where they're back into control of their own kingdom, as you say, or their own universe, as we talk about. And if we do that one person at a time, then at least I'm solving something one person at a time while the other stuff goes on. We still need the big legal challenges for people that are being ageist in their hiring practices. Those things all have to come to create PR and issue management, but that's just not my job. I mean, that has to be handled by government and the Human Rights Commission and the Every Age Counts program by the Brotherhood of St. Lawrence. There's a whole bunch of people out there that can be the advocates. I'm just going to lend my voice to that whenever I get the chance, but at the same time, I want to have some practical solutions being done.
Fix the problem now. Right? I love it. I mean, and look,
exactly.
Kindred spirits in that regard, in the sense that it's not corporate, it's not big government that's going to fix things, right? It's us. And, unfortunately, an individual on their own just isn't impactful enough as the same individual with a 7-figure business that's not requiring their time. I mean, it suddenly becomes a powerful platform for self-expression and impact. An individual wrapped in a business model that provides money, time and fulfillment is the ultimate in the ability to exert one's will into the world. Well, when I say ultimate, it's the first step. Right, clearly being an Elon Musk billionaire and having a space fleet expands one's ability to influence, but it's a journey, right? And I think
totally, it is. It is a journey.
So I think it's just really important what you're doing, and I love the fact that, and I want to talk to this, that you've kind of transitioned from being a marketing guy to being a guy on a mission, and it's a different shift in your positioning in the org chart. But before we get there, I'd love to go back, right? Because you're a marketing guy, you're a business guy, and I think a lot of people listening to this are sitting there going, I've got something I want to cause to happen in the world, number one. B, they probably heard about your pivot type of a maneuver, going from marketing to this expansion of your product. It's like not just marketing anymore, it's now business advisory. And so an expansion of offerings and a narrowing of a niche into, what do you call it? What's the politically correct? Over 50s?
Just mature age. I just call it mature age. Yeah, totally.
You got to be respectful, is what I'm trying to be. My brain goes old people. It's like, you can't say that.
No, I get it. It's hard, and it's hard too because it's totally inculcated into society.
And I'm becoming,
how you going,
well,
you
I'm
old
becoming
bastard?
aware of not my biases, but my language patterns, I suppose, which is a
sure.
bit. Well, it's actually interesting, right? And so, so by niching into, the mature age market, that's also allowed the crystallization of a mission, and I think it was mission led to the niche, if that makes sense. The idea of the mission came first.
That's exactly the way it
walk
happened.
me through that.
Yeah.
Let's go back. What was it? How long has it been? 6 years? 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
So let's go back 6 years ago and put yourself in the shoes of the hunter then that someone could relate to, where it's like everything you've done for decades has been marketing, right? You're in the mindset of trying to be more of the key person of influence in marketing, but you'd already written 6 books, something, right? So it's not like you're unfamiliar with this concept of being the brand. I feel like for you to pivot like that, you must have been bored with the marketing, or you must have had some awareness that wasn't doing it for you anymore.
Look, it was probably boredom with the model of how I was doing it.
What was that? And what was that?
Maybe not even boredom, but maybe frustration. Probably frustration. The model was add more people, add more revenue.
Isn't that what you're doing now?
It was more employees, and now it's more of a network of collaboration. I don't see my licensees as my
so your license, and no, I get it, right? So they're autonomous business leaders doing their own stuff. If they don't get up that morning and they don't hustle, they don't invoice,
Yeah, sure, that does have an impact on our revenue, but at the end of the day, the people that have joined me on the journey
I get it.
Get the purpose.
Sorry, I understand
they get
the
purpose
shift now. Sorry, but
Whereas I guess when I was, let's say, a mid-40-year-old business owner with an expanding team, and you know this from all the work that you and Dan have done, that you get into that no man's land or the desert where you're not quite big enough to extract yourself out of the business, or not quite big enough to put in place specific personnel
what was
who can
the
do
ballpark
certain
revenue
things.
then?
One of those,
or team, just to give people some context of size.
20 plus size and 2 million plus
2 million
revenue. So
100,000
so
revenue
roughly
per
about
employee. That sucks. Not enough.
Yeah, not enough. But still, probably one of the biggest pure strategic marketing consultancies in Australia, because most average 200,000.
Would you say the majority of the IP was in your head? Did you have other marketing strategists in that 20, or were you kind of like the genius with 20 helpers?
There was other marketing strategists. Certainly, I had probably 4 senior people in the team, but they were all operating off our model, so it was still my IP. Every marketing plan got written to the rapid formula, etc., etc. But I'm the first to admit I'm not the greatest HR manager on the planet.
I suck at running businesses too. People like the running operational HR governance, like making sure the trains run on time. No.
Yeah.
Let me come up with a new train. Well, let me come up with a new place we should lay the track and go to. But let me rebrand the train business brand. But
so
making the thing run, like making sure that the little lights on track 8 have been updated to the new LEDs to meet with the standards of compliance. Like.
Yeah, pretty much. So it was a case of, I've always, I think, even in running my business, I'm always operating in the future. I'm always thinking about what's happening in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, just by virtue of the fact of the way I do my strategy. It's always about looking into the future. It's understanding what trends are happening. What have we got to do in a few months' time? I don't do well when I've got to handle something this minute that somebody needs to have an A changed to an E on a piece of artwork or something, which is what you get into with. So the more I'm operating the future, the
and I think
better
most
I am.
people listening to this, that's how they roll too. Like I think the vast 99.99% like love are good communicators, good leaders, or they have the capacity to be good communicators, good leaders, to be the brand, to be the influence, but none of them want to get stuck in management, I don't think. So
No.
walk me through your approach to the decision around the pivot. Because a lot of people are sitting there going,
Well,
I've been doing this so long. There's a bit of that hypnosis. There's a bit of that, like, just I've been doing this for so long. That's a big shift. There's risk. Like,
Yeah. There was 2 phases to it. First was I had a bit of creative destruction. So I had to pull down the model that I had existing in the marketing business.
But that's easy to say.
20 staff.
Right?
Yeah, but it is. It was preceded by 6 weeks.
That's what
of
I want to.
frustration.
That's what I want to know about. Like hit
Yeah.
me with that 6 weeks, because
Yeah.
I think if people hear, oh, and I just did this and I changed the model and off we went and it's like,
No.
but it's that tension, right? That like, oh, what if I fail? So walk us through a bit of that. Just I think that's where people are gonna get it.
Yeah. I'm really good once I make a decision. But for a period of time in that, I was frustrated with what was going on. I was frustrated with staff issues. I was frustrated with clients ringing me saying your staff haven't delivered, and having to, jump in and handle certain issues with clients who were really key to our business. It wasn't that the staff weren't good; they were all great people. It was just more a case of understanding how I was going to make it work with other people delivering things. And then realising that we'd moved away, because when I first started the business, it was very pure. It was a pure idea of just help business owners be more strategic and be transparent in our value. So this is what you pay us to do. If you don't value what we're doing, we'll give you your money back. That was the first letter I wrote to people to tell them I'd started this business. And it had moved into a very typical marketing agency. You got 20 clients, you've got work in progress documents, you've got detailed bits of things having to be done, from ads being created to social media to websites to whatever, and all of that, the tactical complexity, and people then not doing things and not having systems in place and not being big enough to afford people to do certain roles. They're all client facing, and I was it in terms of trying to hold the business together with baling wire and duct tape.
So that's what you were over.
So
it wasn't the creative work. It was
I still loved every time I get a chance to sit with a client and just listen to what they're trying to achieve, and then think through what's the way of helping them. And then when we come up with an outcome and clients are happy, I get juiced up by that. I love helping people solve problems.
So you got stuck into the they call it the managing director, right? The operative word being managing,
exactly,
which sucks.
Yes, exactly. And then Nicole, my wife and also business partner, poking me in the shoulder and saying, "Hey, you realise this is our business. We can do what we want with it." Because a light bulb moment. Oh, that's right. Yes, I don't have to be stuck into this prison of the running the business. And so we once we decided, we then rejigged the business and went back to pure strategy. We actually outsourced everything. We helped a few of our staff start their own businesses as suppliers to us, so they kept doing
How'd you have that conversation?
For us, but
so what I'm hearing is you had to let a bunch of people go and keep a few people flip back on as consultants, right? So so you've had the insight, like, we need to lighten this up, right? Where our core strength superpowers is the strategy, the creative work. All of our emotional energy is going into operational complexity, management, etc. Get rid of that.
Yeah.
Right, but again, easy and sometimes in hindsight obvious decision, but you'd have to agree that a lot of people would potentially avoid making that decision because of the emotional strings attached of going, well, there's 20 people here that potentially aren't going to be here on the other side of this model.
Yeah, totally. And look, that took a lot of they were tough conversations. As it turned out, a few of them were really lovely, though, because the person was already thinking that themselves, that they wanted to do their own thing. So kind of the alignment with those individuals worked perfectly, because it was like, oh, great.
Over and over and over again. I hear that over and over. Whenever people are faced with this idea of having to let people go, when they actually do, it's never as bad. ever as bad as they
No.
make it out in their head. I mean, that's my experience as well. We've all had to go through it.
Yeah, totally. So that was step one. We worked through it. It didn't take all that long. I set myself some goals once we back to the core, so it was really just back to myself and a computer and a few of our clients. We actually gave some of the clients to those people who were starting their own businesses as well, so there wasn't a sale of it. We just said, look, you look after this client because they suit you more anyway, because it's more about online marketing.
Was there any economic need to do this? Like, were you in any kind of like a financial crunch, or was this just purely, we got 20 team, 2 million revenue, not enough margin in it, business model has got to change? Or is there some other extenuating catalyst pushing it through?
No, it was more about taking back control over our journey and our purpose and what we were trying to do, and to make it fun again.
That's cool, man.
Everyone.
That's
involved.
cool. I know a lot of people that won't make that. I know a lot of people right now in my head that should make that move, and don't make that move. There's some courage in that.
Yeah, and and you've got to do it with all the humanity and respect and all those other sorts of things that are required. Of an individual who's taken responsibility for those people. You've still got to take responsibility for them on the way out as well as the way in.
And what did that do? What did that do to money and time? That move.
Profit quadrupled in the next 6 months. Time, because I'm very good at what I do. I don't blow my own trumpet, but I've got a lot of experience in it. I'm good at strategy. I'm good at planning. I'm good at research. We were able to deliver stuff a lot quicker for a lot more remuneration.
You could pay.
Because that was the height. That was the more profitable part of us anyway.
The same amount of time you're putting into management, you could put into strategy and make 4 times as much.
Totally, exactly. This is really. This might sound a little bit mystical or whatever, the universe aligning to things, but we had not even communicated to the market that we'd made this change. But we'd made the decision that we were going to focus on strategy. And I kid you not, from the day we started the new operation, once a week for the next 4 weeks, we had past strategic clients ring and engage us for a new project without them even knowing that we'd gone back to that particular model. So we hit our rejigged 6-month target in 6 weeks. Tripled the revenue, tripled the profit. At times I was sort of like, I'd get off the call and I'd say to Nicole, I can't believe it. We just had a call from somebody I haven't spoken to for 4 years who's just given us this big strategic research project to do, and away it went. And then that led to the conversation with my mentor. So the next thing I did is, okay, so now we're at this point. How do we grow? How do we scale this? How do we scale this core service of strategy and advice? And that's when I then engaged my own mentor, who was a friend of mine who ran a very successful business. I was talking to him we talked about all sorts of things. Do we bring on some investors? Do we get some investment money?
Engaged, did you
get some scale that way? No.
Oh, right.
Just I engaged
just
with
as
him.
a mate.
I said to him, hey, can I ask you to mentor me? And he said, sure, I'm happy to mentor you. And the one rule was, as I said to him, I'm not asking you to invest in the business, because he does invest in businesses. I said, I just want to ask your advice. So if I do go and ask investors, I'm not asking you. So I made it clear up front. I wasn't trying to use this as a way of convincing him to put money into the business.
Did he end up putting money into the business?
No. But I did take him to lunch to say thank you for the really great question of what about mature age people, because this thing wouldn't exist without that day in, I think, January 2016, where he said, what about mature age people? I remember it very clearly. I went down to visit him down the Mornington Peninsula. We had a cup of coffee on the deck of his house. I was sitting there. I had my notepad with me, and he asked that question, and I circled it and wrote it in my notebook. And that was the day that Silver and Wise was born, if you like, because from that led to my research, led to the conversations with the Human Rights Commission, led to the mission, and as I say to him, you're to blame. So, he's a good guy, and he says, oh yeah, but you did it all. I said, yeah, but you kind of helped me start on the pathway, which was
it's funny because it's the work in doing it, but if that work is being applied in the wrong direction, so sometimes that little bit of guidance from someone that can see the bigger picture can just make all that energy and effort worth it. I have the same thing. I have a lot of people say, you know, couldn't have done it without Dent. And my response is, man, you did all the work. But there is a little bit of that.
Yeah.
They did all the work, or you do all the work, but if you're doing all the work in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can run. And, you know, the alignment then comes because then if you've got a really strong purpose or a strong mission, and I just literally started talking about it. That was the other thing that sort of happened. After that, and I found out this information, I just started writing articles on my LinkedIn page. And what I noticed was that those articles were being commented on about 15 or 20 times more often and shared 15 or 20 times more often than my articles on marketing. Now, I'm a marketing expert, but there's a lot of people out there that know a lot about marketing. But there's not many people out there talking about ageism and
so
mature
that's really
age
interesting,
work.
right? And because, again, in terms of that transition, had you fully committed to the transition to 𝗕𝗏 prior to putting out some of that content, or was it part of seeing the engagement of the content made you realize there's an appetite, there's a demand, there's a market for this?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember what came first, but I definitely realised I wanted to do something about it. I hadn't quite codified what that was going to be. So I did lead with ageism and discrimination, and I led with the issue of people starting businesses and surveying people about starting businesses and understanding that. So that was sort of part of we sort of went into this. It was a 2-year research phase from 2016 to 2018 was really product development. We didn't actually launch our first piece of revenue generating services until probably late.
So this is all
17,
parallel to the new iteration of the marketing consultancy, right? Just building it out.
Yeah, and that was still going along on the side, so we're still helping clients and, you know, all that sort of stuff, but building this other one. But look, this is something that probably worthwhile for anyone listening, is that I had never had anyone call and say, hey, I really love what you're doing with your marketing business, I'd like to be involved. As soon as I started talking about mature age work and ageism, people are calling. And that's how all our advisors have come on board. Every single one of them has rung up and said, oh, I read your book, or I read that article, or I was talking to somebody and they said I should speak to you. So this inbound interest from people, whether it's partners or potential clients or potential advisors, has only ever happened on the 𝗕𝗏 business. It's never happened on the 𝗺𝗏𝗃 business. Because of the purpose.
Unpack that a bit, because
people
you know, we talk a lot, and I talk a lot about mission, purpose, vision as a really big deal. You know, and if you don't have it, it's akin to an impotence. And you know, you mentioned the warm and fuzzy type stuff before. I think people often put it in the warm and fuzzy category. And you can see stats on Forbes and Inc. saying, you know, purpose-driven companies outperform, blah, blah, blah. But I also think because people struggle so much with, like, what is my purpose? And I overthought it a lot, thinking it was this mystical, magical thing that I needed to find, as opposed to just a commitment to fix something in the world, and keeping it as simple as that. So you've seen a new problem that you want to solve. That becomes the mission first. Then you start looking at the business model around it. But just walk me through a bit of that. Walk me through your evolution as being like a man on a mission. From someone's perspective that is kind of like in their business, doing their thing, selling products and services and marketing and funnels and ads and videos, and they're putting content out there and da-da-da-da-da. But if they're honest, they're sitting there going, wouldn't really say we're on a mission. Like if we were to interview their team wouldn't really necessarily say, if they were being honest, that they're on a mission. Whereas I get the sense that every single person in your organization now, like, that's the first thing.
It is, absolutely. And I think we've had various chats about this in the past, Glenn, but I'm very much of the view that everyone has a purpose. and we have it from the moment we're put on this planet. And I
Why
don't
not?
want to get spiritual or mystical about it, but everyone knows they do. And when we find it, that's when the magic happens. That's when you can build a strong business. It's when you can survive challenges. It's when you can push through things that try and stop you. It's when you're actually on that mission. And for most of it, it's about one word, and that's help. You look at any 2 or 3 year old child, and you've got a young child now. Even from a very early age, they'll walk over and try and grab a broom off you while you're sweeping. In fact, that the earliest, I think, when we had that purpose seminar a couple of years ago, or the 6th P, philanthropy. I remember being, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years old and going out with Dad on his floor covering business, and I remember picking up the broom and sweeping some of the dust away from where he was working, because I just wanted to help. It wasn't about that's my job or whatever. I just wanted to help, and of course more times than often I got under his feet and caused havoc and whatever I did. But if you look at any child from an early age, they're
Mila,
trying to help.
my daughter, so she's somewhere between 18 months and 2 years now. So I don't know, everyone talks in months. She's close to 2 years. She's always like eating, and then she's like, Dad, and like feeding me and wanting to help. And it's like wanting to make sure that I'm like, that's for Mila. It's like in your mouth. And she's like, but Dad?
No. Yeah, exactly. So any person who's observed kids for any length of time has realised that they will have a unique personality. They have something that they like doing, something they're good at, whether it's music or sport or just helping around the house or whatever. And often you can talk to adults and direct their attention back to those moments, and they realise, oh yeah, that's right, that's what I really wanted to do as a kid. Or, you know, when people ask the question, what do you want to be? I want to be a princess, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a fireman, whatever. I know it sounds trite, but that's what, in my belief, if you're a business owner, you've got to connect to some kind of mission. And I don't mean just giving 10 cents for every dollar you earn, or a cent for, I don't mean giving away money.
Being up to something.
I just mean connecting for being up to something. What is the purpose of your business?
And so you say that
money?
With a lot of conviction. Did you have that for the marketing business, or is this like a new elevation in your own perspective?
I think it's growth of me as an individual and other things that I've done in my life. I've always been interested in helping people, but the business had a purpose, but it was a purpose that was defined within
the value proposition
of marketing. It was, how do we help your value proposition? How do we help people use marketing as a tool to run a more successful business? So it's defined within that. So I think I was telling you I studied science and I was going to be a ranger. That was my initial career path. I was going to wander around the bush. You know, I'm a trained botanist, so I was going to run around the bush, I don't know, cataloguing plants or something. That was what I wanted to do, because I love the environment. So there was always, Blue Frog always had a sort of a background in sustainable marketing and the environment and that sort of stuff. But again, it was probably subverted to the mission of marketing as a value proposition. I've also done a lot in human rights over the years. So I've helped a bunch of people with some business in Indigenous areas. So I worked on some stuff with Brian Dorr and Patrick Dodson. They had a business called Common Fate, and I helped with the development of a logo for that, and just got involved. And a mate of mine was working on it, and I helped them out a bit. It wasn't a massive lot, but I went to some events and helped out there, and I love the Indigenous culture, and the aspect of human rights associated with that culture was of interest to me. I've supported human rights charities and other things in the past. So I think that was already inherently in my makeup as an individual, this idea of help, but also the idea of equality and of opportunity, and also individual responsibility to make a difference. And if we don't have those things, I think then business becomes about money, and frankly that's fine, but it's
so
not
for someone
fulfilling.
that is in your let me ask this: if current hunter could go back and whisper in the ear some advice to the hunter of, I don't know, when was the marketing business at its peak? All right, so go back and you're whispering
9.
in your ear then, right? In the context of this mission stuff, knowing that, you know, the old you is feeling pretty good about the human rights stuff and the contribution, and you've got that philosophy, but now knowing there's another level, what would you say to yourself?
I'd say to myself, elevate what you're doing beyond that thing, which is the money, revenue. You know, it's got to be elevated to beyond that. Otherwise it makes no sense about chasing paper so you can buy shit. You know, chasing revenue so you can buy shit. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with making a difference and delivering a great product and delivering value and, you know, being in exchange with your customers, making sure that they're happy that you've delivered on your promises. But the real joy of being a business owner, of generating a difference beyond just the difference to the person in terms of helping them with the service, making a difference to their ability, making a difference to their future, that's where it becomes special. Because that's where you've then what's the best thing? It's where you've fulfilled your role as a human being on this planet, I think, is to help others and to make a difference to beyond just making the money. And there's a lot of people in the past, if you look at some of the great philanthropists of the past, they've always talked about this idea that business owners have a responsibility to the community that generates the revenue for them in order to give back. And there's many that have done this. But often it's been a way from a small business owner to think about it. And what I'm saying is that even as a small business owner, if you can connect to that, you're just going to make life easier for yourself. And the revenue will come because it's aligned to something that really does make a difference. People tend to like
following people that are going somewhere clear and defined.
Yeah. I think everyone's inspired by it because all of us have that. That's the reason. Everyone has help embedded in our DNA or in our spirit, whichever way you think about it as an individual. We have that embedded. So if we see somebody that's trying to help and it actually connects with our own purpose, then we'll definitely go and help that person. And I think that's the true value, isn't it? It's not about having followers. It's about having people that come and join you on the journey, who have a specific role to play in it. They do something along that journey. They're not just spectators or passengers. They're part of the journey. And that's you've got to think about employees like that as well. Is don't employ someone just because of their skills and abilities. Employ them because they actually get your purpose, and they do actually love that purpose, because then they become more than an employee. They become a friend, an ally, you know, somebody.
There's really something super powerful in being able to define and articulate what you're up to beyond money. It really does create a different level of influence and connection. 100%.
Yeah.
Shift gears a bit.
Yeah. And it has to be real.
Shift gears a bit.
It has to be real. Yeah.
Your worst day in business. Doesn't have to be this business, but just business in general, because I find, you know, entrepreneurship is a bipolar journey of high highs and low lows. And I'm always curious as to some of the insights learnt in the valley of the shadow.
Yes.
Can you think of a day that was particularly shit?
Yeah. I think the really big one was one we talked a little bit about earlier, I think, was sitting reading a newspaper on holiday and finding that one of our clients had been artificially kicked out of business because their products had been taken off the shelves, and we lost 50% of our revenue overnight. And I knew I had to, you know, I was thousands of miles from home. I knew I had to go back and handle a situation that was a threat to the survival of the business, to our employees, to our own income and revenue. That was pretty crap. It certainly put a dent in the holiday. And probably there was a second day where I think we'd done a whole lot of work on a project for a client who was, you know, seemed to be a really nice person. I think it was like $20,000 or $25,000 worth of work. we delivered the project, we delivered the marketing plan, we delivered the presentation to their board, and then they didn't pay us for the work, and they disappeared off the face of the planet. Couldn't even find them. So those 2 days, and yes, they're both financially related to the survival of the business. They both created huge impact at the time, but they did horrible situations as a business owner, because your heart sinks, your stomach's turned inside out, you're not sleeping because you're worried about the money side of things, because you've got this responsibility to your people. They turned out to teach me a lot. You know what they say, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Certainly we were able to run a better business as a result, but they were awful days.
I've never had a business model that's kind of given me the opportunity for any one client to leave and it be a 50% hit, right? We've always just had a little bit more volume than that, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
But I come across a lot of people that have more than 50% in one client. They're almost like, excuse me, they're almost like a consultant to one entity with a few little side hustles on the side. Almost. Like, not pretending to be a business, that's a bit disrespectful, but thinking of themselves as a business, and yet really, what one client leaves and they're in a lot of trouble. Clearly the answer is obvious, and yet it can't be so obvious because so many people are in that situation. So break apart the insight beyond the obviousness, right? Oh, we need more clients. Well, duh, but you needed that beforehand. So how is it that hadn't crossed your mind beforehand?
I think it's a case, and I look back to, because I went through this in great detail about how to solve that in the future, and of course you come up with the obvious answers, but I think it's always about this idea of being stuck in the now or the past. So the idea that you're not really projecting into the future to understand what are the potential risks and opportunities for your business. And so my insight, other than the obvious of putting in place policies of not having 50% of your revenue coming from one client, a policy to take 50% of the project fee up front, so that at least you've got some of it in your bank account, and therefore you're less at risk of somebody buggering off and not paying you. The insight for me was push your attention out into the future. Doesn't matter what business you run, dedicate some of your attention, your brain power, whatever it is, to having a look to what could happen next week or the week after or 3 months' time. And at the same time, prepare your business for the rainy day. This old advice, it's old advice. Putting reserves aside, making sure you've got a month coverage in revenue, or a month coverage for wages, or 2 months coverage for wages. And this may take a couple of years for somebody to build that up, but it's about putting aside the backup plan. But at the same time, and we talk about it, it's called the weather eye. Sailors, you're a sailor, Glenn, you know this term. You got an eye on the horizon, right? If you're heading in a particular direction and you see storm clouds, well, perhaps you're going to tack away and get into a safe harbour for the night, or you're going to batten down, pull the sails down, and make sure that everything's strapped in, and all the points where water can get in are all shut down, so you can just ride through it. Yeah, batten the hatches. So, but I don't think we do this well enough in small business, as small business owners. I don't think we don't focus on the future enough, far enough into the future, to give us time to, because time is everyone's friend. If you've got time, you can change direction, you can prepare, you can go and talk to the bank manager, you can get an overdraft, you can do all these things. But if it happens like that,
I have a maxim that if you want to work less, plan more. My opinion is that the reason people don't is just because they forget, is that they get caught up in the noise of the day-to-day. Do you have any kind of context, mechanism, ritual? Like, is there something you built in to your calendar, like I don't know what, that reminds you to kind of look at the threats?
Yeah, totally. I have, by the side of me here, I have a diary which has scheduled time for those things. So the daily, weekly, monthly battle plan. There's a rhythm of these.
Walk us through your diary. How do you run a diary?
Yep. Yeah. So I have my every year I'm writing a 12-month plan for the business as well as for our clients. So I've got our own 12-month plan, and that gets broken down into quarterly, monthly, and then daily activities that are related to the overall goals. And then we use, which is funny, I developed the tool which we give to our clients in the Silver and Wise business, and we give them this idea of 8 rooms in a business. So there's 8 rooms. You've got to spend time in each room. And one of those rooms is the strategy room. And the strategy room requires that you're setting goals and putting in place actions to achieve those goals in the future. It's the only future-focused room. The other rooms are all day-to-day operational stuff, but the strategy and leadership room is where you go to think about what could happen, the pros and cons. And
what are the other rooms?
It's not to say we can't. Well, there's a marketing room, as you'd expect. There's a sales room. There's a quality management room. There's a people room. There's a money room, and there's an adapt and disrupt room, which is also the weather eye room, which is what's happening. What are the trends that are happening? How can you adapt? How do you disrupt yourself before somebody disrupts you?
When you say weather eye, do you mean like an eye on the weather? What? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's an old sailing term, apparently. I'm not a sailor, but I looked it up, and the idea was you've got one eye on the weather, one eye on the tiller, one eye on the weather, and then it just gives you an ability. People have probably heard the shepherd's term, which was it red sky at night, shepherd's delight, red sky in morning, shepherd's warning. It's this idea of looking into the distance.
Oh no, I get it, and
you're running,
yeah. I'm always curious.
But it's just a fun way of thinking about it. It's going,
I'm always curious as to people's mechanisms for remembering. Because, if someone's listening to this and finds themselves in that situation, it's not that it hasn't crossed their mind before. It's that it hasn't crossed their mind enough because they don't have a dashboard or some red light blinking at them going, there's a glitch with your business here that needs addressing. So we have a weekly meeting.
Yeah.
And in that weekly meeting, every single person on the team needs to contribute something to the awareness list. And so we want people to tune into their awareness, right?
Perfect.
And we don't care what it is. It could be a problem. It could be some kind of an issue. It could be an opportunity, or it could be a threat. But the idea is that you need to add at least one thing every single week. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to address those things, but it's interesting to have everyone on the team. We get a different perspective of the opportunities. So Shu in IT is giving us, potential opportunities around technology that are coming up for efficiency, etc., or threats, right? Like, server needs to change, and this, provider we're on is, not effective and won't let us scale beyond this many users, or whatever it is. I would never have come up with that in a million years in my diary. And so I think having that team thinking about those things as well is pretty key.
Yeah. Yeah, whether it's team or stakeholders. I mean, my stakeholders are my licensed advisors, so each one of them have got this. I've got one of them that's responsible for looking at tenders that are coming. So he'll say, "Hey, I saw a tender we can go for," and we'll go, "Yep, that's a good one," or the rest of the team will say, "No, that's probably a bit outside our wheelhouse. We won't go for that." So it is about. I mean, everybody has a responsibility that's connected to the team. My accountants have a responsibility, even though they're an employed, outsourced contractors. They still have
is that
a responsibility
implied
about future
or
for
explicit?
So if something changes. Every outsourced contractor that we use has a job description as well.
Talk to me a bit about that, because I think of team in the same way. When I say team, most people hear a full-time pay-as-you-go employee type thing. And when I say, no, your team includes suppliers, your team include, part-time contractors, etc. But you get what you pitch for, right? They all need to be brought into the fold from that paradigm. And my paradigm is like, what's the outcome that they're committing to achieving for the business, and then how do we measure to that, as opposed to hiring a service? We're hiring an outcome. We're paying for an outcome. How do you do that?
I literally, with our organising board, or the tool we use for all the roles that have to be done in the organisation. Of course, I have a few different hats that I wear. Everyone has things that they're responsible for, and therefore they're given a written briefing on those responsibilities in relation to it. So if I engage somebody, and I do the same thing, so if a client comes to me in our marketing business and they say, we need some marketing done, okay, we'll have a conversation, we do a proposal, they engage us, one of the first things I do is give them my job description as their outsourced marketing department. And often that'll blow them away, because they'll say, oh, so you're actually taking responsibility for these things? I say, yes, because you've engaged me to do that. You don't have anyone else in the business to do it. You're not trained to do it. That's why you've engaged me. So this is our responsibility. These are the things we have to report to you to make sure that we're doing the job. Because I'm saying to them, I'm building you a marketing system. I'm not building a job. I'm not building a job for myself. I'm trying to build a system so you can go on and then potentially employ someone else in the future. But while we're doing it, this is what
the commitment to an outcome blows people's mind.
Because,
it's like such a novel. It shouldn't be such a novel concept.
No, it shouldn't be. But it's all about your responsibility to those that you're connected to, in my opinion. You know, if you ask somebody to do a job, there's no point pissing and moaning when they don't do it if you didn't tell them what job you wanted them to do. And then the other side of it, telling them that they're doing a good job, or if they're not, helping them improve or find somebody else to do it who can do it better eventually. But you've got to, if you engage somebody to do it, you've got to say, well, okay, this is what I'd like you to do. You're important to me. You have a value. We're going to come full circle, aren't we? Everyone has a value. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has something to do. And if they're on the journey, then they need to be told they're on the journey, and they need to be told they're doing well. Hey, thanks for carrying my backpack for me for the last six kilometres because I was stuffed. I appreciate it. You've done a great job. We've got.
Have you ever had a supplier, not want to work to that?
Oh yeah,
interesting,
for sure.
And how do you?
Yeah.
Performance manage, perhaps that.
They won't get engaged.
Yeah, and I mean check-ins. Like, do you have like formal? Because again, I find people get into this supplier relationship where it's just work just being done and not necessarily outcomes being driven to.
Yeah. I mean, there is the output pass. There's work in progress. Of course, things get, you recognise no one's perfect for a start. Outputs are going to lead to outcomes so you get the outputs going first, and then you're working towards the outcome. So I can be accused of being impatient sometimes, but I also like to think long term. So if you're working towards an outcome in marketing, it might take 2 years to work out the best marketing model for a business. So let's work through it. But if someone's clearly not achieving either the outputs or even committed to the outcome eventually, then it just becomes about they're just there to get the money each month. I've had I won't point out individuals, but I've had multiple social media companies who just all they're about is
no concept around
the
outcome.
hashtags.
I had the same experience.
No, and then sending reports.
We had a bad accountant after bad accountant after bad accountant that were just doing accounting, and got us into some serious hot water because I was making some assumptions that because I did ask them at the start, are you going to help us with internal processes to make sure we're running tight governance? Yeah. Nah, none of that. And yet I was operating assuming that they were, and I'm off out here, and anyway, they didn't, and it's like, oh shit, issues. So I was referred to a great new accountant, and I said, I don't want to engage you as an accountant. I want to engage you for us to be able to predictably hit X profit per quarter with us being able to predict that 3 months in advance. That's the mission statement, right? Because at the time, our finances were so all over the place, so reactive because there wasn't any kind of predictive controls in place. And I'm always running last minute campaigns, not to be proactive, but to try to fill a hole. The idea was, well, if we could look 3 months in the future and know, because of the campaigns that we're running, the promotions, the internal costs, our burn, everything that we could possibly have to spend money on, all the different ways we're going to bring money in. If we could predict revenue and profit 3 months in advance within a 5% variance, and the accountant could help us build the internal governance to achieve that outcome, bang, and they've done it. you know, and it was like, wow.
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of had to get clear on, I don't want a service, I want an outcome from this person. What do I want that outcome to be? And I think, again, for me now, engaging anyone, whether it's a team, whether it's a supplier, getting really clear on what do I want them to cause happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that speaks to any organisation. Every individual has a responsibility internally to other individuals further down the track. So if we talk about that old idea of a marketing funnel, somebody comes in as a lead, they become a customer, they start getting service, they're paying bills, the service quality changes. You know, there's elements within an organisation where, and I think sometimes in organisations people forget that it's not just the salesperson or the customer service person who is responsible for the customer or responsible for an outcome. Everyone has a little bit of responsibility. And if you can break that down into not just the things that the person do, but what that results in, you know, satisfied customer, or a customer who comes back and buys more, or good public relations because they've written a good Google review for you. You know, if you service a great customer and you get a result, if they don't write a Google review, that's an out point. It's like, oh, wow. So we've done a good job, but they didn't write a review. And then you talk to the customer and say, oh yeah, well you did a good job, but you know, the response to the emails a bit, you know, it's a bit like 48 hours to get somebody to answer my questions, blah blah blah. So they're happy,
fanatic,
but they're not, you know. And also within the organisation, I give an example of saying to somebody, okay, you're a salesperson and you've signed up a new client and they've signed the proposal and they've agreed to, I don't know, let's say $3,000 a month retainer. Now you take that proposal to the person who's got the job in Treasury, and it's not complete and given to Treasury unless it also includes the ABN number, who we're billing, what's their purchase order, what's their address, who's their contact number, where's their email address. All of those things is then a complete package of information to Treasury so they can do their job. And if Treasury doesn't get the complete bit of information, they pass it back to the salesperson and say, hey, bud, do your job to a completion. Don't leave it to me because that's not my job. You're clearly defined. You have to bring that. It's not just a signed proposal. Hoo-hoo, let's go and get a beer at the pub, celebrate the win. It's a completed package of information to the person so they can do their job.
Last question.
Anyway.
I'm curious, how did you package your IP, your knowledge around business coaching, advisory, etc., in such a way that other people could use that? Like, how does that, because a lot of people think I would love to be able to get some stuff out of my head and I could become the trainer type model and scale that way, but there is devil in that detail. And I hear a lot of concerns around what's going to stop people running off and using that, because they've only got to change it a little bit and it's sort of theirs and it gets squirrely and then it's a legal thing and you're not going to chase that anyway. So am I just training up competitors and yada, yada, yada. How did you circle that square?
Yeah. Okay. The first thing, and I've said this to you before, I don't care if somebody runs off with my stuff. It doesn't bother me. I don't try and trademark stuff, or I trademark our logo, of course, but I feel that's solved by having the people who get the purpose on the journey. And if you get them in at the first time and they share the purpose, then they're more likely to stay with you on the journey and not worry about taking it and running off. How I put that together was in two stages. First of all, there was a couple of years worth of development of product and research and value propositions and all that sort of stuff, and building the sort of beta model, if you like, which was the writing the first book and creating the first course and creating a way that I would coach people. I then coached quite a few people myself through the actual beta product, if you like. So I coached individual people to start businesses, took them through the program, researched what they got out of it, surveyed, so there's the whole product development stuff. And then the first coach or first advisor who came on as a licensee, I personally took them through every single piece of resource, and it took me 120 hours of time. So I think you've got to persist through that development process, that it actually can be delivered valuably and then get somebody else trained to do it. And then I realised clearly if I was going to get to 20 or 30 advisors in Australia, I couldn't spend 120 hours with every single one of them. So then I packaged the entire training of the coach to become a coach into a boot camp online, where they can go through, it's literally 20 days of training, and every single day has a learning objective for the day. It has a video, it has content, it has all the resources, and then it has a feedback loop so that they work through each day, and then they can tell me what are they missing, or did they get it, rate it, all that sort of stuff. Get through the whole 20 days, and I only have to really see them at the start, halfway through, and at the end, probably for 4 or 5 hours, for them to become a fully trained coach ready to deliver. And then they have to apprentice and they have to deliver each of the programs to a good outcome with a client who rates them well, and then I'll give them their wings, if you like. They get their pilot's wings to deliver. So it is a case of, for me, and probably again because of my science background, I have to take everything through to a workable solution, and then I can scale it. I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think you can jump from an idea to a scalable solution in one step. You've got to go through the pain of seeing that it works, and then being able to get other people to do it as well. And then I've also got this idea that it's a constant feedback loop, and I say to my advisors, if you find one of these tools is not working, well, let's find a better tool. I don't care. As long as it gets the outcome that the business owner knows how to manage his money, great. Let's go and find somebody else's resources and license that in and use it as part of our tool. Because our thing is, an outcome isn't a paid client who's paid for $9,000 worth of coaching. It's a successful, mature age business owner who has a secure financial future. So our outcome is the person is secure and they're doing well. It's not they've paid for a course and they gave us a rating out of 10. I couldn't care less. I just want them to win, because otherwise they're going to be on social service in 5 years' time, and I've not met my overall objective.
It might be a leading question, but one of the organising forces I find that also hold that model together is, no, let me rephrase it. One of the things that I find that causes that model to fall apart is if there is no key person of influence. If they're like you, as the multiple best-selling author, speaker, media, commentator, at a level sort of beyond the others in the organisation, or different from, kind of provides an umbrella of air cover and positioning for you, but also deal flow for them. Yeah. I'm assuming, right? This is where I see the model really works, where you can have people that just love doing the coaching or the work, but don't want to also chase the business. And so you, as the key person of influence, are able to generate inbound demand, as you mentioned. Just like, do you find that with what you do?
Yeah, totally. And look, the guys that are in the group already, they've told me several times they don't want to do what I do. They don't want to write books. They don't want to get on radio. They don't want to do any of that stuff.
It's the easy stuff.
I love it. I really want to push. I want to push the mission. I want to beat people up a bit. What did you call it? Poking the bear. I want to poke the bear a bit. I've got a little bit more bolshy since you said that to me. It's like I'll poke somebody in the chest if I think that it's the wrong thing to be done, and they're full of hot air, if you like. But I also love that sort of bringing the tribe together and then helping that, because I all want them to become key persons of influence in their own area as well. So if Chris on the southern suburbs of Sydney becomes the key person of influence for New South Wales, great. I'm still a book writer. I'm still creating the program, but now he's the guy that they go to for anything that happens in New South Wales. Beauty. I've done my job. Because I don't necessarily, yes, I want to be the KPI, but I don't necessarily want to be the KPI for everything. There's little mounds of influence within each of those things. So I'm trying to help them also be influencers in this. And the only reason they can do that is because they're bought into the mission. They actually believe the purpose. They believe the fact that we should be ending ageism. They get as upset as I do about stupidity and choosing somebody based on, their age, or not choosing somebody based on their age. So that's when I know we've won, is because I can see them getting as frustrated and as annoyed at me at this stupidity that's happening in the world today on this particular issue. There's lots of other stupid things happening, we know that, but we can only take the bit that we want to try and fix and handle that bit.
What's the future hold?
The future is more mature age people who aren't subject to the issue of ageism, for me. 1 at a time, 10 at a time, 100 time. Yes, there's a scale to it. I suppose I'll end with a win. The win was getting on 7:02 a.m. the other day and talking about mature workers and talking about the fact that I was an author and that we really wanted to end ageism and we wanted people to be chosen based on their skills and their ability to deliver as opposed to their age. And within half an hour of being on radio, I had a call from SBS Inclusion, who create courses for corporates on inclusion and diversity, wanting to partner with us on developing a course based on our materials and our books. So that, for me, that's scale, because they bring scale. They've got 1,000 organisations and 250,000 employees who have access to their courses.
And you don't have to build it. I mean, you don't have to sell it. You just have to build it and it gets distributed.
No. Just have to build it and it'll be distributed. So for me, it's about that scale. It's about international. This is a global problem. It's not an Australian problem. So it's connecting up with people in Canada and the UK and France and New Zealand who are on this same mission and seeing how we can do business together and also create an effect. And it's about, if I project 10 years into the future, it's about, we can sit back and say, yeah, we helped 100,000 mature age people start a business. We helped 100,000 mature age people take back control of their future, to get out of this nexus of ageism, to not be subject to ageism or subject to somebody's discrimination or subject to being thought of as a second-class citizen because they have a bit of grey hair or
Can we plug your
a
book?
few wrinkles.
Have you got
sure.
one there?
It's called The Experience Equation, and I don't have one in front of me, mate. That's terrible, isn't it?
We'll do a pop-up.
I don't have it. Anyway, it's available on Amazon. It's available on Amazon.
Find you?
Yeah, I'll send you an image. Best way to find me.
Oh, look at that!
Look, my helper just Nicole just brought it over. Here she is. There she is.
Hey,
partner in crime. They can find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way. So if you just look up Hunter Leonard on LinkedIn, and you'll find me. And I'm very happy to connect with anyone that wants to chat about this.
Awesome.
Or
And this
any
episode
other mission
will
that they
be
happen to be on as well.
my Instagram at Glenn Carlson. So if anyone wants to scroll down, Hunter will be in the comments as well. But certainly as a speaker, as a commentator, Hunter is obviously eminent in this space. But also, you know, if you're a mature leader in corporate that finds that you don't have the freedom, the autonomy, the self-expression that perhaps you should, maybe it's time to leverage that silver wisdom. Mate, this has been cool. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. No,
Any
me too. It's been lovely
final
chatting to you
words,
again.
if there was something that you could share with the world in a format that would stand the test of time, what would you like people to know?
Just invest your time in finding what your purpose and mission on this planet is. So what are you going to make a difference with? And then if you connect to business,
to do that,
fantastic.
3 things. Be brave. Have fun. Let's go make a dent in the universe. Thank you, Hunter. Beautiful. Cheers, mate.
Very cool.